Okay, my name is Christopher Parham, and some people may know me as Ice Cube 57 on the Ambosphere Forum. I'm basically going to do like a wrap up review with my experience with the e-bike deal frame. It's basically going to be split into a pros section and a cons section. The pros of the bike is it has 150 millimeter wide dropouts. And then the thickness of the dropouts are 16 millimeters, so it should be able to hold almost any motor in it, because it has a built-in torque on because of the thickness of the dropouts. Unfortunately, the dropouts are aluminum, but they still are pretty thick, and I think they can hold anything. The frame should fit a Crow motor perfectly with a single-speed freewheel. Um, the box, it provides plenty of battery room. It's made for headway cells, although you could put something else in it, like LiPo. I'll get to that a little bit later. Uh, Whenever I had a bike shop professionally assemble this bike, and when they finally got it together and I finally sat on it, it felt like a mini chopper. I like the wide handlebars that it had, and then the handlebars were kind of low. It's a 24-inch wheel build, so the handlebars were kind of low, but they were pretty wide. So it just felt like a mini chopper. The steering angle looked like it would handle high speed very well, and the shock, looked like it could absorb quite a few bumps, and it's an air shock, so you can change, dampen, do a whole lot of things with that to get uh, the perfect ride. Again, I said the handlebars are wide, and it offers a lot of real estate for everything from lights to psychoanalysts to bells, throttles, all of that. The box, it comes with two size boxes. It comes with like I think 4.5 inch wide box, and then 5.25 inch wide box. So that can fit a lot of stuff. But the the amount of space that's actually in between the cranks is 6.6 inches. So you could theoretically build a larger box, and it could accommodate a box that's up to 6.6 inches wide. And even with the box being that big, it wouldn't be awkward to pedal. Bike came with a rear rack. It seems pretty solid once you install it. The tires are pretty large tires. They're 24-inch tires, but the overall diameter is, I think it's like 3.0, so 24 by 3.0. The rims look pretty beefy, pretty solid. Another thing that I liked about the bike was the brake levers. They seem pretty premium compared to other levers that I've seen from other manufacturers. Now we get to the cons of the bike, and again, uh, this is this is the issues that I encountered, and that my local bike shop encountered. Um, One thing about this build for me is I had to settle for a lot less in a lot of areas on the bike that on other bikes I didn't have these issues on Walmart bikes or even premium bikes like Giant. I didn't have any of these issues. So I'm gonna go down a few of them. The wide bottom bracket restricts choices of things that you can add, like torque sensors, pass sensors, cranks, and and chain rings, because it uses a downhill bottom bracket that's 100 millimeters wide, and then also it uses ISIS cranks. But the cranks do leave. They have 130 BCD, so you can put a larger chain ring on it. But the thing is, the 46 tooth chain ring is the maximum that you can use with the battery box. If you didn't have to use the battery box, you could put a slightly larger chain ring, but then again, the chain stays would get in the way of using something really, really large. I've had bikes where I could accommodate up to a 62 chain ring. This isn't one of those bikes. The brackets that hold the battery box that go along the length of the battery box, they aren't designed really, really well. I opted for the larger battery box because this was going to be a long range build for me, but it kind of required you to kind of rig them. What I ended up having to do is get longer bolts and then use steel spacers to space it out to where it properly cradled the box. And it, it's okay, but aesthetically, it's a poor call. I wish they would have had a bracket that would have held the box in correctly, but I guess this was like one of those one size fit all. You're supposed to figure it out yourself, and that's one of the things that with this frame is like you're having to figure out a lot of things yourself. Um, the battery box was cheaply made. It's like made out of real thin metal, so it's like the sidewalls, and then like the ring were pretty flimsy, but the base of the box was pretty hefty. I wish the bottom of the box or the bottom tray of the box was the same thickness all the way around. It would have been a bulletproof box, but um, it just wasn't. And then while assembling the box, you'll think you can just put one screw in, then put the next screw in, put the next screw in, and everything will line up. In this case, the box didn't do that. What I end up having issues with is I kind of had to loosely install all the screws, and as you tighten all the screws, it'll pull the box back in to correct alignment. And even when the box was put together, you can tell, you can look at certain edges of the box where it was just ill fitting. Also with the battery box, if you were using LiPo with the battery box, the screws come out a little bit. You can Dremel them down, but they come out a little bit, and then the seams are also on the inside of the box too. So you will have to pad the whole box in order to use LiPo. And I even went as far as buying like the foam floor tiles, and I cut everything to size, and I was about to finish up my battery build before I encountered some other issues. But pretty much almost from the start, I was looking for an alternative to the battery box. So, it's, and then eventually I really couldn't find anybody locally, and I really wanted something else, so I settled on using the box. And then, it just as the build progressed, I ended up, scrapping the build and not building it any further. All right, going on a little bit more is if you look at the frame from the rear, my frame bowed to the left. So, and then the technicians at the bike shop, we draped the string around the bike. We put one string on one side of the dropout, draped it around the head tube, and connected it to the other side of the dropout on the other side of the bike. And what we measured was the seat post, the distance between the string and the seat post. And it was, what we found out is, at least at the seat post, the frame was bowed to the left about 12 millimeters, but that was at the seat post. So when you get back to the dropout, it could be even further. Now, I'm going to tell you how this all comes into place. So basically, when you put a wheel in, um, like if you put a 135 dropout motor in the dropout, you're going to have left and right place, so you're going to have to shim the wheel to the right to get the chain and everything to line up on the right side. I can deal with that. I can deal with you putting washers and everything over there. But also one of the things that you have to deal with is the disc brake. The disc brake needs to come out quite a bit, like an inch and some change. It needs to come over. So he designed a bracket that pushes the caliper over, and so that solved that issue. All right, so we come back over to the freewheel side, and so theoretically you're supposed to be able to use a 7-speed freewheel, but since the frame is offset to the left a little bit, this changes the chain line. Normally on a real bike, the chain line lines up in the middle of the freewheel. With this bike, the chain line lines up with the first gear. So whenever you start going up the freewheel to the larger gears, you get a really bad bow in the chain. But I believe if the frame wasn't bent um, and it was lined up in the center of the freewheel, the chain line was lined up in the center of the freewheel, you can go up and down without having any issues. So the problem that I encountered was I wanted to use a 7-speed, and then of course I'm finding out I can't use a 7-speed. So, after exchanging a few words, it was like use a 5-speed. So again, the 5-speed is lining up on the lower ends, but as you go up the freewheel, those higher gears are kind of inaccessible. To kind of counteract that, you can space out the freewheel from the motor to push it back over to the right, and it'll give you better alignment with the 5-speed. Um, it's something that I never did try out myself, but I just know that the chain line right out the gate was messed up, and it's largely due to the frame being bowed to the left and um, offsetting everything and upsetting the chain line. I did try to go and use a single speed, and the problem that I had with the single speed was one, to convert the motor to where you can use a single speed, you need a spacer on the freewheel that brings the freewheel out to where that first gear is. The first gear, or the hardest gear, normally is on the 7-speed freewheel, and then you could use uh, a single speed freewheel. All right, I didn't know that, so we put the freewheel on, and then of course, like I said, anything that's close to the motor cover, it can't really access. Um, really well. And so, also the other problem that we had is whenever you try to use a single speed setup, you have to use a tensioner. And the thing is, the derailleur hanger is made for really cheap derailleurs. So if you try to use a singulator or a single speed tensioner, you can't use it because it's made for really cheap derailleurs. So you end up having to Dremel material away from the hanger just to accommodate a single speed tensioner. And then it gets even worse. Like if you put the motor in the dropout, and most motors, you bottom it out in the middle of the dropout. If you do that, at least on my frame, if you did that, what the problem that you had was the motor, the wheel was tracking, the front of the wheel was tracking to the right. So if you look down the back of the bike, the wheel was pointed towards the right a little bit. So even though the wheel was in the center line of the bike, it still wanted to track right when it was bottom out in the dropout. And so we tried to pull it out of the dropout and compensate for that to get it to track straight. And so when you do that, it messes up with the brake alignment, and it knocks the brake alignment way out to where you can't adjust to compensate for that. And then also at the same time, it messes up the chain line to where if you straighten the wheel out to where it's tracking perfectly with the center line of the bike, it creates a bow in the chain, but the brake is okay. So it's sort of like when you fix one problem and get the chain line perfect, it messes up the brake. But when you try to correct the the tracking issue, the brake is okay, but there's a bow in the chain. And the thing is, anytime you have a bow in the chain, you start wearing out the chain, wearing out your chain ring, and wearing out the rear gears in the rear. Um, to overcome the single speed issue, we did try to use the derailleur that he included, and we just put a string through it, and then we locked it out to where it did line up. And the problem that we're having with that is the derailleur doesn't have a B screw, so the B screw affects how the chain wraps around the single speed cog. So even though it looked good when you went to go ride the bike, there wasn't enough wrap around the freewheel to get sufficient, locking. So whenever you try to put any pressure on the cranks, the chain would slip. So I mean, issue after issue after issue with the rear end. just like, I mean, I was throwing money at it. I'm having this bike assembled by a bike shop, so I'm paying hourly time for them to try to overcome all of these issues. And in the end, I kept talking with the owner, and he kept giving me tips, but the tips really weren't lining up to where, I had a solid, reliable bike. On my bikes, I like to pedal. I've given up a lot of gears, dropped down to a single speed just to eliminate a lot of issues, and even the single speed, it was just creating so much of an issue. Another thing about the frame, if you try to put a 26-inch wheel in it, since since there's alignment geometry issues, when you look at it, the tire would rub on the top part closest up towards the seat. It'll be like super offset. So we opted to run a 20. He sent me a 24-inch wheel, and in the pictures, everything looked good. The alignment, the spacing, we put washers in it, shimmed it over to the right, and everything looked good. So I'm assuming the frame can accept everything from 24 and less. So um, it's just like there's a lot of issues with this bike that you would give up a lot of things that if you had a regular frame you wouldn't have these issues. There's a lot of things going on with I believe between the frame being skewed, um, the bottom bracket, 100 millimeter bottom bracket, it does a whole lot of horrible things to the chain line. So if the frame was perfect, you probably wouldn't have any issues, but the 100 millimeter bottom bracket doesn't help. Out a lot. Um, Let me see. I have a list on the screen, so I'm just making sure I hit everything on the list. Um, yeah, so another thing, like, yeah, trying to compensate for all of these things, I'm having to pull it out of the dropout. And of course, the further you get out the dropout, I would think the weaker it would be, especially if you're using a regen or whatever. Every electric motor that you put in the dropouts pretty much needs to seat completely in the dropouts perfectly, not halfway out. This isn't a regular bike where you can adjust chain tension and all of that just by pulling it back and forth in the dropout. I shouldn't have to compensate for frame issues by doing that. And like I said, doing one thing through the other thing off, and it was, like I said, it was just a real headache. But the thing that really shocked me is, you know, I was going to give up on this frame before, and I ended up purchasing another bike. And so they were trying to get this e-bike deal frame together, and I mean, it stayed at the shop. We spent like almost 2, if not more, weeks, a few times a day ordering parts and everything, trying to get this together. Um, but yet I ordered a giant bike, which was just sitting up at their shop, brand new in the box, and it took 2 hours for them to put it together, adjust everything with an electric motor. So right now I have a new giant Revel bike with the motor that I originally wanted to run, and everything is mechanically working perfectly on that bike. I'm able to shift through all the gears. I have disc brakes on the front and the rear. Everything is perfect on that bike, but yet the e-bike deal frame, I could not get a true mechanical rolling chassis that I felt was great and that the shop felt was, solid. Um, it's like I think there would be a resolution at the end of the bill, but me going in to the bill thinking that I would have X, Y, Z, and then even me sacrificing a lot of things, buying extra parts, waiting on extra things, waiting on uh, adapters and stuff to get redesigned, and and everything, changing motors to a motor that it was comparable, but it really wasn't what I wanted. I sacrificed a lot of things to try to get a rolling chassis and get something going, and in the end, it's really sad that I'm able to get 2 e-bikes going on a different frame. Everything works perfectly. I have an old Title Force frame that I originally started out with. I sold it. I ended up buying it back. And the same parts that he sent me, I just transferred over to that bike. And it's running beautifully. I don't have any issues. And then there's the brand new 29er that I bought. Installed everything on that frame and went together, no issues. By no means am I a novice at this. I've been doing this for um, since '09, '08, '09. I've built on average about 2 to 3 bikes a year. I've been through several motor systems. I'm not stupid when it comes to this, but when it comes to this frame, there were so many headaches that until they get worked out and really, I mean, like until you go through, find the exact parts and find the exact scenarios to where you can piece together a bike that works. And like I said, it's one thing to have a frame and you think you can do this, you think you can do that, and you have the components that can do this and do that, but when you assemble it together, you have to limit yourself and cross a lot of things off. You shouldn't, have a bike that, or have a motor system that's supposed to be able to accept a 7-speed freewheel, and you built a frame that could adequately hold the motor, but it's out of alignment to where I have to use a 5-speed freewheel, and then I can't even use all of the 5-speed, and then to even use a single speed, it's still you still give up a lot and have to rework the system. From what I see, this bike right out the box, you're gonna. I mean, it's just you have to really have fabrication skills and patience and money and everything. Like I said, I spent $500 on a giant frame, installed everything on that frame in less than 2 hours. With the e-bike dealer frame, the frame is like $400, the components, or another $300-400. Some of the components are sold separately. So when you really look at how much money went into this frame, it's probably $1,200 to $1,400. Plus, he even sent me a motor to you know get things up and going. And like I said, it may work for him at his shop, but this frame was just, I don't know what was up with the frame. I mean, I know what was up with the frame, but it was just, I could not get it going the way I would like and the way that I would say, hey, this is a great frame. I can buy several of these, assemble the bike, and sell it, and have a clear conscience. And, it made people think that I may be biased. Um, I mean, and you can talk to some of the people on the forum, like Neptronics and Tesla. I guess I don't know. His name is I don't know, but you can talk to several people that I've talked to behind the scenes, and I was really gung ho for this, and I really wanted to make it work, but unfortunately, I was unable to make it work, and it was just added more salt in the wound that I was able to build two bikes and way, way, way less time that I put into this one bike. So, if you didn't have to worry about gears or anything like that, and put pegs on it, like find a way to put pegs through the bottom bracket and just mount a motor in the rear, this would be like a good pit bike frame or something like that, or almost like a moped style frame. But if you want to pedal and want all the mechanical parts to work like it's supposed to, you're going to have to wait a while until the company works out the kinks and finally is able to deliver a competent part set that you're not sacrificing or giving up anything or have these illusions of XYZ working, out of the box. Um, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, The frame is sitting in my living room. I shifted the components over to another bike. If I could send the frame back and not lose money on it, I would send it back. Um, but I feel that, in a way that the owner did uh, try to make things right with me. Like I said, he sent me uh, a motor on the faith system that, I assure that this will work, blah, 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 blah. And, I will even send the motor back if I have to, but, here it is, I'm sitting with a $300-400 frame in my living room that I had high hopes for, and it's just not working. And I feel that I would definitely be more pleased with the other two bikes that I built. So, I mean, in a way, I'm saying, like, I guess we're in a way, I guess we're even. This isn't meant to be like a slander video or anything like that. I'm just telling it like it is. You're going to encounter some issues, and unless you have fabrication skills to overcome all the issues, and unless you're willing to set the bar very, very low, I'll just kind of steer clear of this for right now until he works out the kinks. In a way, I feel like an early adopter. Even the owner said I'm not really pushing the frames right now because I haven't, really tested everything out just to see what works. He claims that none of his frames have these issues, but, again, somebody that has years of experience, this by far was the hardest build that I ever had. So, and I'm seeing other people with Raptor frames, even I guess this is the NYX frames, people putting together stuff without issue, but this one is just like right out the gate. There's just, I'm really bummed out. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this video right here, and I hope it gives you a good idea on what I encountered. So, so I lost a lot of money in this, and I'm still like looking at how many things I could have built, or what I could have pimped out, or how many more batteries I could have bought with the money that I sunk into this. But it is what it is. Thanks for watching.